always amazed to open the Torah and find that the words are still there, just like we left them. Really, I think that I have this fantasy of all of the letters jumping down and reforming themselves into different words and going different places when we roll up the scroll so tightly. Every so often when you unroll a scroll, this is what scribes check for. There's a little telltale hint that that's the case, because you might see a little ink that's flaked off of a Torah letter. And they think it's because the scrolls are rolled so tightly, but I think it's because they don't get back in place again in time, just as the scroll's being opened up. The letters that have been visiting with each other, after all, once upon a time on Mount Sinai, you see, it was all one fiery thing, and they were all together. At least so the sages teach us. And all of those words together, once they're reunited, when somebody gives a good drasha and links this verse to that verse, it's like the fire of Sinai all over again. And it's like those letters are joyfully reunited. I haven't seen you since we graduated, they would say. I haven't seen you since Sinai. What have you been doing with yourself? And then, because you see, they're all separated by the zip codes of various books and by the area codes of various areas of the Torah or of the Bible, but there is a place where they're all joined together. And so whenever I open up the scroll and I see that Terumah is right there, the letters got back in place. V'yikuli Terumah. They got back in place once again. And I'm afraid one day I'll catch them before they get back in place. But that would mean that the world would have substantially changed, and I'm frightened about that possibility. But still in all, I must say, I harbor some tiny little hope of seeing them out of place one day, or just moving back. Speaking about things being in place and just exactly in their place, that's precisely what this parasha concerns itself with. This is a parasha of building sacred space. This jumble of people come out of Egypt. What are they going to do? How do they form themselves into a community? How do they form themselves into a coherent community? How do they form themselves into a community that has some coherent and sacred space at the center? People somehow do need to be defined by a core. It can be an inner core. It can be a personal core. It can be a communal core for the corporation or the incorporation of community. You need to have all of these pieces in place. And this, after Mount Sinai, this is the time when the people think about what it would be like to move away from that mountain that had joined them all together. They had described the shape of the perimeter of the mountain, let's say, or the arc around the mountain. But now they're going to lose that shape and they're going to wander through the wilderness, but something else has to be made around which they can circle or which can form them into some kind of a community, a coherent center. That's the holy space. But of what is it made? Is it made from something that comes from the heavens that is beyond our understanding? No. To the extent that that was even tried, it really didn't work. The first set of tablets, which came from wherever they came from, we don't know, that didn't work. They are ultimately shattered and then replaced by a much more comprehensible set of tablets that Moses had to hew out himself. So we get that. Where does holy stuff come from? It comes from the absolutely everyday, ordinary, garden variety, run-of-the-mill stuff that people bring to the making of the holy space, and that's what we get here. It's not leftover stuff, to be sure. It's stuff that's important to each and every person, but each and every person must bring it. And what we have in this parasha is the introduction of the dramatis persona of the rest of the book, or most of the rest of the book of Exodus. We get to meet weavings and carpentry and loops and curtains and sheets and dyeing fabrics and carting of animals and the shearing and all of the things that go into the work of the building of the sanctuary. We meet them. Some people think these parshiot are very hard to read. I'm not so sure whether they're hard to read because, in my own opinion, they have such unique vocabulary that once you learn it, you don't get it confused with anything else. It's very specific to the stuff of building the sanctuary. Is it all absolutely perfect and absolutely beautiful? I can, and maybe should, maybe will, when I come up from downstairs, bring you a book to pass around called the tabernacle, which we used to set out on a stand so that people could come and look at it. That's actually a good idea to do even now. So I will actually do that. And you'll be able to see richly dyed and woven fabrics and so on. They might be more beautiful in the artist's rendition. Who knows what it was like in the ancient world and the primitive conditions and so on in which the story tells us these items were made. The point is not that they were absolutely the most breathtaking things in the world, but they were made to call attention to a small universe, to this fitting with that and that fitting with this. Kaftor vaferach, among the other things. There is a flower, and there is the calyx inside the flower. There's the stem inside the flower. Can you imagine something being made that is that exquisitely shaped and fits just right and looks just right? The oldest commentary that we have on the book of Exodus, Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael, cites Rabbi Tarfon, late first century sage. Well, it tells a story about him. Adam haya omer davar mitukan, when a person would say something mitukan, tikund, mitukan, which means what? Correct. It does mean correct. It means fixed. It means fashioned. It means well-made, well-constructed. Kishahaya Adam Omer Davar Mitukan, when somebody would say something that, a student would say something that was particularly well-fashioned. Rabbi Tarfon Haya Omer Kaftor Vaferach. Rabbi Tarfon would say, a flower and its calyx. Talking just about this parasha. That's so well-fashioned. Does it mean it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen or the most beautiful thing I've ever heard? I don't think so. I don't think that's what Rabbi Tarfon had in mind. But it's well-made, and it's well-said, and it fits, and it has its place in the universe, in the cosmos. And that's the idea. That itself makes it beautiful. Cosmos means, well, you know, cosmos, cosmic. But it's also the root of the word cosmetic. Cosmetic means something that is in its place and is well made and is proper and that draws attention to itself. Not for the sake of information, but for the sake of something that's more than equal to the total of the parts. That's the cosmos. And here is the microcosmos. It is cosmetically just right. It is just exactly the way it's supposed to be. Now we should hear it. What do you think? You up for that?
Why not?
Okay, as long as you're here and you have the specialized vocabulary and the palette of all of the colors on your brush, maybe the yes, and the dolphin skins and the kaftor vaferach. When I come back, I'll try to remember to bring that book.